So Jason, the topic of the day is this intersection of identity and personalization, which, as you well know, these are big, broad topics, right? And I know that your focus at Blockgraph is really at this intersection of identity and personalization within the worlds of cross-platform TV and video. Let's start here. Like, why is that your area of focus? And from your perspective, what's needed to enable a more personalized TV landscape?
Well, that's a great question, Matt. And I think it all starts with the problem that we recognized a couple of years ago. Blockcraft was initially started as an incubation effort within Comcast. And as the Beat audience knows, we spun Blockcraft out of Comcast back in May of this past year and have been busy over the summer. The reason why we recognize this being such a big problem in the cross platform video space was threefold. The first was that the industry was becoming cross-platform. Video was increasingly being consumed over IP channels. And we've seen that really accelerate over the last 5 months. So that was the first focus area that we recognized. The second was that privacy was becoming an increasingly important part of the equation with an increasing focus on global regulatory reforms, whether that was in the European Union with GDPR or here in the US with CCPA and more to come. And then I think the third piece was that everyone in the industry saw data as such an important piece of the marketing equation, whether it was for targeting, for contextual advertising, or for measurement. So with these three things coming together, the industry as it was stood up initially wasn't really initially designed for that. So we realized that Blockgraph was necessary for a better, more sustainable ecosystem to thrive moving forward. If you think about what we believe is necessary from the TV industry and why it's different, the landscape is just inherently more complex when it comes to video. You have distribution channels, and those are increasingly more fragmented. And those are not always the same party as the inventory publisher or as the brand advertiser or the data provider. So all of these companies need to work together, but they need to do it in a controlled, compliant fashion. And really, that's the role that we see Blockgraph helping facilitate.
Yeah, got it. Makes a lot of sense, and I suppose that speaks to the idea that I think one of the things we spend a lot of time thinking about here, and I'm sure you do as well, is that it's one thing to have the identity signals; it's a whole other thing to activate them. And I think that speaks to the point you're talking about on how there's a number of players. It's a little bit more complex than we might think of in this kind of web, open web world. So I know that's what a lot of what you're thinking about with what you're building at Blockgraph is how to make the activation of identity signals easier. I guess my question is, are you finding that the challenge is more on the marketer end or more on the media company end, or maybe both? Like, where's the friction, and how does this get easier so that we do have a much more personalized landscape?
That's a great question. And I think it's all of the above. I think marketers are just trying to reach an audience across platforms and be able to understand whether or not their advertising was effective. Unfortunately, we've made it all too hard for them to do that. Publishers are also not always able to understand their audience because they might not be the distributor. And these companies need to work together in a way that allows them to all maintain what they have and then act on it in real time. So this requires a handshake between the distributor, the publisher, the brand. And in order for that to be easy, you need an infrastructure layer that can help kind of bring those identity signals from wherever they're coming from, more likely than not from a trusted identity partner, and then be able to then act on them either for targeting, for measurement, or for reporting. And we see that as being the key focus area for the industry to move forward.
Let me follow up quickly on that piece. Do you find, is it measurement and targeting are the two use cases that get brought up all the time? Do you find one driving the other, or are they pretty equally important right now to the industry, right? Does targeting come first and then more evolved measurement? Or are you hearing more people talk about measurement first as a way to move forward on more advanced targeting?
Well, I think it's again, no simple answer on this one, but I think they're two sides of the same coin in many ways. Now, there's not a complete linear sequence in how they need to be brought forward because at the end of the day, measurement could be various different flavors. One kind of very simple form of measurement, which sounds simple but is actually hard to achieve, is just understanding reach and frequency across linear television, addressable, VOD, CTV, OTT, etc. And doing that in a way that allows you to tie together all of the outcomes is really important for marketers who are just trying to understand reach and frequency. And at the end of the day, that's a really tangible thing that we can move forward immediately. The other part of measurement is outcomes and tying out attribution events to that ad exposure on a in an authenticated way. So that's, I think, also an area of focus for the industry to move forward, and where we're seeing a lot of progress. One of the areas we've been leaning forward with our partner TV Squared is helping bring a more authenticated cross-channel measurement and attribution solution to the market. And then I think on the targeting side, there's a variety of different ways that targeting can happen. There's basic contextual, taking a custom audience and being able to build a more optimal linear plan. And then there's also more addressable type of targeting and actually reaching on a one-to-one basis the right household devices or individuals. So I think those are all interrelated, but they don't have to all be done at the same time for the industry to see some real benefit.
Yeah, no, makes a ton of sense. I think it's going to be interesting times ahead for sure, because these are some meaty topics that the industry is, I think, doing an ever better job of tackling. So it should be interesting how that evolves. Let's hit on one last piece here, which is, you mentioned it earlier, but the importance of privacy and consent. And certainly, that topic, along with data security, is all wrapped as a core of what you guys are thinking about at BlockGraph. And I know is in many ways, why your solution exists is to help maintain and manage those kind of concepts. And clearly, with the evolution of the identity signals which are available to us, which is clearly morphing as a result of the ad tech companies making different decisions, both from a cookie perspective as well as a mobile ID perspective. You highlighted earlier the consent legislation, which is certainly making its way through the US now as well. There's a lot of change on the horizon there. I think it's hard to know certainly exactly where this ends up, but I'm guessing it's something you guys think a lot about and are planning for. So do you have a sense of what the impact is going to be and how it's going to change what our industry is capable of in the coming years?
Yeah, it's a great question. And then again, no crystal ball on where the industry is going. There's a lot of factors that could influence some of these regulations and how they evolve. But I think what has become undoubtedly clear is that privacy will continue to be at the forefront of advertising, be at the forefront of media, and being able to manage those regulations and that compliance against those regulations is something that organizations have to keep front and center at their mind. And it's no longer a nice to have, it's table stakes for doing business. So I think in order to do that, you need a technology that allows you to flexibly implement all of your own policies and procedures, because every company will have its own data policies that will be driven in large part by those regulatory frameworks. And having technology that can help enforce each organization's privacy policies and data strategies is an area that we really are looking to bring forward to the industry. So having those controls and that set of data access provisions that allow companies to keep control of their data, but to connect it with others through a privacy-focused infrastructure is going to be key.
Jason, you guys are clearly in rapid development mode. The JV was formed not that long ago. I know you guys are live in market. There's a lot of great stuff happening. You're working with a lot of great companies. What's on the horizon? Like what can companies do today? And what's the view of what will be doable over the next 6+ months?
Absolutely great question. So if you think about where we started with BlockGraph, we knew that in order to act on identity and to be able to bring targeting and measurement products, it started with distribution. So we focused a lot of our efforts initially focusing on some of the largest distributors in the US, with Comcast and Charter, having a huge base of millions of households, over half the US footprint from a total audience perspective. Likewise, we brought in Viacom CBS, who not only is one of the biggest broadcasters in the world, to our partnership, they also have an increasing distribution presence through their Paramount Plus products, formerly CBS All Access. So I think with the three of those, focusing on distribution was key. TV and being able to take an audience and help those companies act on it through a controlled kind of workflow was key. Now, what we see next is working with both demand partners and bringing them into the equation. But in order to do that, the base of the network will be working with some of the biggest identity enablers in the industry who have the right signals and have the rights to use those signals at scale. And then likewise, other kind of applications, whether it's modeling or being able to push segments to all of the programmatic platforms. So we really see this as an ecosystem where we're bringing together all of the right constituents for whether it's for addressable TV, data-driven linear, or cross-channel video, which would also include OTT CTV. So for us, it started with core addressable TV, and now we're increasingly focusing on cross-platform and working with some of the biggest kind of identity and data partners in the world to make this a reality at scale.